have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
May I respond?
You may sit.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job, based on what I know.
Well, that's just a flippant statement, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
You
Mr.
may.
Chairman?
I didn't ask
Senator,
questions.
please let the Secretary have
I'd be
the floor.
happy to, but then I can respond to his.
Your time's up, Senator, and willfully used, I might add. Your remarks do not represent the view of this committee.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so as you may have seen today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio testified in front of a Senate committee because, of course, that's just exactly what we need more of in our government, guys. Surely we don't want Congress to actually be doing things of substance. Surely we wouldn't want them to be codifying the mandate that President Trump was elected to fulfill on November 5th, 2024. No. This is what we need. We need more hearings where absolutely nothing gets accomplished. It's just a vain opportunity for grandstanding, clout-chasing Democrat senators to do some type of theatrical performance where they say, oh, look, I yelled at a Trump cabinet official and then they absolutely fact-checked me to my face. But look, Democrats, I confronted someone for no consequence. Guys, please donate to my campaign. And the whole thing is just a gigantic waste of time. Why do we even do these hearings? What is the point of them? What is learned in this process that can't be learned, I don't know, over a little text message, over a little email? It's like I understand why these are supposed to happen from a parliamentary reason, but the reality is this, okay? In 2025, all that these little stupid committee hearings and everything is designed to do is pure performance art, clout chasing, exposure for politicians, and that is it. But however, that certainly does fall well in line with a theme we've repeatedly talked about from the Democrat Party, which is nothing they do is real. Nothing they do actually accomplishes anything. The entire, basically, political function of these people is to put on a really stupid performative act, accomplish nothing, and then be like, hey, look, guys, we're so amazing because we did a performance, right? That's why people call them theater kids. I have likened the Democrats to basically being nowadays like a spoken word poetry club in the hipster part of Brooklyn, because that's all they are. You know, everything is, hey, what stupid act can I do next? Oh, Cory Booker is going to give a 24-hour speech on the Senate floor, guys. Oh, let's do a sit-in protest at the Capitol for 12 hours on a Sunday when nobody's freaking there. And then, of course, most recently, what is the trend we keep on seeing? Oh, let me do something that is obviously going to get me arrested in the form of protest, whether that's, either rioting or trespassing into a private space and screaming, or, going to an ICE facility, being repeatedly warned to leave, not leaving, and then crying victim and claiming you were being politically prosecuted when people actually say, okay, you're under arrest because you're not supposed to be here. We told you many times. And that trend continued today, as you could probably expect, ladies and gentlemen, as in the middle of Marco Rubio's testimony. Big surprise. I know everyone is so shocked to see this, but guess what we had? Even more protesters who in the process get dragged out by Capitol Police and are crying bloody victim the entire time. Check it out.
There's a bloodbath going on! Stop it! Israel is a genocide! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! I cannot live in peace! I will not be silent while there's a genocide going on!
No weapons to Israel.
So there you had even more Palestine protesters, as usual, just literally just grandstanding, like, oh, let me get in a Senate committee, scream, get arrested, haha, I really took a stand for Palestine. I once again asked a question to these people. I don't understand how you think this type of behavior, whether it's at Congress or at Columbia or wherever, makes you look good, okay? You just look like idiots. You're not advancing your cause in any way, firstly there. Secondly, if you're at all actually familiar with the current state of geopolitics, you would know that Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel are actually not getting along that well, okay? So I don't know what you're necessarily protesting, but it's like, okay, that's why. It's because the Free Palestine people are not actually looking for some type of reasonable negotiated solution or a peace deal or whatever, right? It's all just pure grandstanding, blah, 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 based in this very vague idealism. They don't live in the real world. Their demands are unrealistic. We're not even here to get into that. I just want to once again reiterate, common theme here. Yeah. Oh, look, I screamed in a hearing. What did you accomplish? Absolutely nothing. But guys, I do want to point out here that, all right, you might say that's just the activists. What are the Democrat politicians up to? Well, it turns out actually much of the same, because today we also got to talk about, as some of you may have seen, maybe not, the heated exchange that took place between Secretary of State Rubio and Democrat Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, who many of you may recognize. This guy has made quite a career as of late, clout chasing. I don't know if he's trying to run for president in 2028 or whatever he's doing. But of course, he made his big political claim to fame when he flew to El Salvador to try to negotiate for the release of alleged MS-13 gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Of course, this is the guy who's fought harder for MS-13 than the very people of his own state. And he got quite into it with Marco Rubio today, so we'll talk about that. First, though, folks, do us a favor. If you enjoy the content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe if you are new. You subscribing is the best way to support our work. And let's continue our push, guys, to 1 million subscribers. And with that said, so here it is, once again. So, I talked about before, all right, so let's keep going on this theme of like everything the Democrats do is stupid and performative. When Chris Van Hollen first went to El Salvador, one of the things I repeatedly laughed at was the fact that he accomplished nothing when he was there. Because he goes there, okay, he shows up on a whim with no prior warning or announcement to the Salvadorian government, and then he immediately demands, you guys remember this, El Salvador to release Kilmar Garcia and allow Chris Van Hollen to go see him. And Chris Van Hollen even says, okay, can I come into the maximum security prison where he's being held to go and visit him? And El Salvador is like, no, you can't just come unsolicited without request. Like, you got to make an appointment or something like that first, and we can arrange it, but you can't just show up with no warning as a U.S. senator in another country and just demand that we cave to your demands because you're like an American Democrat or something, right? And so everyone remember, he did this huge press conference about it, crying victim. He's like, Bukele wouldn't let me in. They're so bad. They're so mean. And then 2 days later, El Salvador is like, okay, like we understand that you're here now. Here's Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's alive. He's fine. Have some margaritas and then leave. And, but the whole thing, the reason I bring that up is so the whole thing was performative, right? Chris Van Hollen pretending like El Salvador wasn't listening to him or they had a thing out to get him, performative. Then they go to see him and he's like, are you alive? Let me color grade the pictures and make them different. The whole thing is ridiculous. Anyways, that said, take a listen to the exchange between Van Hollen and Marco Rubio today, because as you can see, the top chief senator of MS-13 is not much different in this regard either. A lot of performative grandstanding and even more so just pure nonsensical behavior and hardcore advocacy for MS-13. So check it out for yourself.
I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
May I respond?
You may sit.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job. Based on what I know.
Well, that's just a flippant statement, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
I didn't ask
Senator,
questions.
please let the Secretary have
I'd be
the floor.
happy to, but then I can respond to his
Your
response.
time's up, Senator, and willfully used, I might add.
Well,
your remarks do not represent the view of this committee.
Well, Mr.
Secretary, please.
Well, I'd like to. I can't respond to everything he said because much of these are untrue, but I'll go through a few. First of all, I'm actually very proud of the work we've done with USAID. For example, I don't regret cutting $10 million for male circumcisions in Mozambique. I don't know how that makes us stronger and more prosperous as a nation. I don't regret psychosocial support services.
I raised Sudan, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr.
Senator, Senator, I'd ask you to suspend. You had 7 straight minutes of
I chose to use my time that way, Mr. Chairman. That's my right to
Please
use my time
suspend
that way.
Secretary Rubio.
Well, I can go on. I mean, there's other things here. We spent $227,000 for Big Cat's YouTube channel from USAID. We spent $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, whatever the hell that means. So I can go on and on. I got the list here, and there's more. I didn't even bring the whole list. In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear. In the days to come, you're going to see who you went to defend.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated comments like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor. You had
Secretary
your time.
Rubio should take that testimony to the federal court of the United States because he hasn't done it under oath.
Here's another point, okay? there is a division in our government between the federal branch and the judicial branch. No judge in the judicial branch cannot tell me or the president how to conduct foreign policy. No judge can tell me how I have to outreach to a foreign partner or what I need to say to them. And if I do reach to that foreign partner and talk to them, I have under no obligation to share that with the judiciary branch. Just like a judge cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister of Russia, they cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister or the president of El Salvador. And if I did negotiate with them, which we have responded to them, and we've told them we've had communications with the president of El Salvador, I am under no obligation under our division of powers in this country and to share with the judicial branch how I conducted diplomacy of the United States. It would actually be counterproductive. If I started sharing with courts, or frankly, with the media, my conversations with foreign leaders and all of their details, no foreign leader would talk to me again, and we would break trust with them. So I have complied with every court order. What I won't comply with is an order to disclose what I'm saying and what we're talking about with a foreign leader, because then they won't talk to me. Diplomacy doesn't work that way. About the student visas, let me say this. I don't deport anybody, and I don't snatch anybody. The State Department does not have officers in the street snatching everybody. What I do is revoke visas, and it's very simple. A visa is not a right. It is a privilege. People apply for student visas to come into the United States and study. And if you tell me that you're coming to the United States to lead campus crusades, to take over libraries and try to burn down buildings and acts of violence, we're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what Ms. Ozturk did?
We're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what she did? Come on, Mr. Secretary.
And every single one of these cases, the factors are different.
Senator,
the bottom line is, if you're coming here to stir up trouble on our campuses, we will deny you a visa. And if you have a visa and we find you, we will revoke it. And we're going to do more. There are more coming. We're going to continue to revoke the visas of people who are here as guests and are disrupting our higher education facilities. People are paying money. These kids pay money to go to school, and they have to walk through a bunch of lunatics who are here on student visas.
Disrupting the foreign policy of the United States.
I want to do more. I hope we can find more of these people.
That's pathetic, Mr. Secretary.
In fact, the other day, some guys led a riot. I forgot what university it was, and I asked, please, can you find the arrest records of all the people that were arrested at that riot at that campus? Because if any of them have a visa, we're going to revoke it.
I feel so much safer when you lock up people like Ms. Ozturk, Ms. Secretary.
We've had enough time on the subject. Thank you very much.
I mean, you can't even make that up. You have Chris Van Hollen, of all people, saying, and I quote, "You're just blowing smoke here now," basically saying that Marco is grandstanding, he's being performative, he's not really saying much when... Really? Because that's everything as usual we saw from Chris Van Hollen. It's just a stupid performative theater here. I mean, first and foremost, he starts off the statement, the exchange there, by saying that I regret voting for you as Secretary of State, which is like, okay, whatever. You got your little soundbite in. But then Marco Rubio responds by saying, responds to that comment. He's responding to what Chris Van Hollen said by saying, okay, if you regret voting for me, then clearly I'm doing a good job. And what does Chris Van Hollen do? He says, that's a flippant statement. In other words, how dare you say that, Marco? Hey, it's inappropriate. You shouldn't be saying stuff like that in this hearing. Dude, you just said you regret voting for him. You got condemned by the very chair of the committee saying, oh, that's just not appropriate. That's not, within decorum or whatever. So you have that. You have him, of course, constantly interrupting, and the opportunities where Marco Rubio obviously did have to speak, he absolutely tore Chris Van Hollen apart on USAID. I would argue especially on Kilmar Garcia and the deportation of students here on foreign visas who are engaged in, political violence and things like that. But that's not what it's about, right? You think the Democrats care about that? You think Chris Van Hollen cares? No, it's all about the soundbite. It's all about getting that 15-second exchange that can go on MSDNC for about one night. They can go on, they can raise some campaign dollars, and the Democrats can clap like seals. Wow, Chris Van Hollen, you're fighting so hard for the people. You flew to El Salvador to fight for MS-13. You said something stupid in a cabinet hearing and then did nothing about it. Well, yes, this is what we need more of in the Democrat Party, guys. The Democrats are trying to figure it out. We need more fighters like Chris Van Hollen. They're going to say all this stupid stuff like that. The entire party is just so ridiculous. I cannot imagine being a part of one of these individuals. But yeah, there you have it. Okay, so Chris Van Hollen, nothing new there. Again, just the normal, usual antics we have going on. But it doesn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen, because we also had another clip here of Senator Tim Kaine. You may remember this was Hillary Clinton's VP. So there is a alternate timeline where this guy is the Vice President of the United States. But he goes on here to suggest that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is racist, right? He's racist for letting in white, about 50, by the way. I think the total number now is 57. 57 white South African refugees into this country, because how dare you allow people into the nation of the United States that are actually white? Check it out.
But I'm going to ask you, so a well-justified fear of persecution?
Yeah, they thought their farms were being burned down and they would be killed. I think that's a pretty good justification for wanting to come. They're afraid for their lives.
And should it be applied in an even-handed way? That's an easy.
No, our foreign policy doesn't require even-handedness. It requires prioritizing the interests of the United States.
The phrase says you are entitled to entrance as a refugee if you demonstrate a well-justified fear of persecution.
No, you're not entitled.
So
you're
can
allowed.
you have a different standard based upon the color of somebody's skin? Would that be acceptable?
Well, I'm not the one arguing that. Apparently you are, because you don't like the fact that they're white, and that's why they're coming.
I'm just asking you to say that would be unacceptable.
Well, no,
that
I would say that the United States,
a very easy thing
the United States has a right to pick and choose who they allow into the United States.
Even based on the color of somebody's skin.
You're the one that's talking about the color of their skin, not me. These
are
people whose farms were being burned down and they were killed because of the color of their skin. Well, you've demonstrated enough because you think anyone should be allowed into this country for any reason because they met a certain criteria.
Who has said that?
We are going to prioritize people that come into our country on the basis of what's in the interest of this country. That's a small number of people that are coming.
But you said this weekend that there would be more.
But in other cases, it's harder to vet. In other cases, it's more difficult. And by the way, the United States admits people every year.
Yeah, so once again, you have 10 million people coming to the country under Joe Biden. That is, of course, not only fine, that's not just okay, that's actively a good thing. Don't you know diversity is our strength? But the moment that less than 60 white people are brought into the U.S. as refugees, suddenly that is the biggest political crisis ever known to man. That is white supremacy, right? 10 million people into the country, that's fine. 60 white people, though? However, on a bigger picture here, I think it is worth noting that repeatedly we see this story where leftists just F around and find out on so many levels, right? Protester in the middle of the hearing got arrested. Oh no! F around and find out. Democrat senator want to come to Marco Rubio, want to ask a stupid question for your stupid soundbite so you can get your stupid fundraising on Act Blue for like 15 minutes? Okay, F around and find out. He's going to respond to you. And then, oh, no, he shouldn't have the right to respond. That's a flippant statement. I'm going to talk over you. I'm going to keep interrupting you in the middle of the hearing. Don't respond. I just want to have my little time, right? Because that's the thing. They're not really there to ask questions. They're there, once again, to get their soundbite, chase the clout, and go away, which is one thing. Okay, whatever. I guess you have the right to do that. But is it not kind of frustrating to watch that this is what your taxpayer dollars are funding, right? Just literal political theater, okay? You know, this is not a comedy club. This is not a debate club in school or Model UN or something. You know, this is real. This is a real government. They don't do anything real, though. They just do this performative nonsense. Anyways, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.